Hey everyone, welcome. Just giving a minute for a few more folks to join the audience, but really excited to have you all. We're going to get started in just about 1 minute. All right, cool. I am going to kick things off very briefly. Welcome everyone to Viaka's monthly demo day. Like last month, we're hosting this in partnership with TechWadi. If you've attended one of these before, you know, like I try to keep the introduction as short as possible, so we can get into pitches and hearing from founders. This month, we have 5 great startups working in marketing tech and audio and music. And we have founders from both the MENA region and North America, which is really exciting. Each founder will obviously pitch what they're working on, so you get the chance to hear more about them during their pitches. We also have a great feedback panel of investors. We have Dana Louie from HubSpot Ventures, Samuel Saab from ZigZag VC, and Mohammed Munshi from Nuwa Capital. Huge thanks to them for joining and providing their insight and expertise. So real quick, for those that don't know, the Viaka Network is a digital community for founders, investors, and experts, and generally tech builders with a connection or interest to the MENA in the MENA region. Among other things, we have a members-only Slack workspace. We have monthly events like this one. We arrange for virtual one-on-one coffee chats between members. And we've also started to do some small in-person gatherings in Boston and New York, and hopefully we can expand to the Bay Area as well as cities in the Middle East like Dubai. So this is all free at the moment. We'd love for everyone listening to join. We have over 250 members across 30 cities worldwide. I'll share a link in the Zoom chat with an application right after this introduction. As I mentioned, sorry. Speaking of our events, we actually have another virtual one coming up on Wednesday. We're hosting a panel with builders who are from the MENA region or connected to the MENA region, but working worldwide and using AI, either inside a corporate environment or launching startups of their own. And I'll share an Eventbrite link for that as well. Also, as I mentioned, super excited to partner with TechWadi. They're one of the leading nonprofit organizations for the MENA diaspora, particularly in North America. I'm personally on the operating board for TechWadi. The image here was from our annual forum last fall, where we had over 300 attendees in the Bay Area. So it's a great organization, hosts really high quality events. Check out techwadi.org for more information. Last slide from me is just a quick note on format. So we're going to have about 20 minutes per startup. When all things are said and done, the founder will pitch for about the first 10, and then we will open up to questions from the investor panel. If anyone from the audience has a question, feel free to post it in the chat, and I'll make sure that we address it before the end of that, or the founder can jump in afterwards and communicate via the Zoom chat. I'll also be posting 2-minute warnings for each section so that folks have a sense if they're pitching of how much time we have left. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Pardees to start things off. Pardees, I'm going to make you a co-host and pin your screen so you can share. And then I will start the timer.
Awesome. Woohoo. Oh, there we are. Still waiting for co-host access.
Yeah, I pinned you first so that everyone could see you, but now I need to make you.
Yeah, I can just watch me stay here awkwardly while Hannah gets everything set.
There we go.
Oh yeah. All right. I'm gonna start the slide share and then we'll get going. Okay. So the biggest joke for me when I was in college back in 2009 to 2010, that was like I would spend my entire life on Facebook. Everything that I did was always there. My friends were always like, you're not going to have a real job. Like, what are you going to do when you graduate? And I would say Facebook. The funny thing is that the joke's on everybody now because digital marketing is actually the #1 needed job across the world, according to LinkedIn in 2021. Just to talk about this in a little bit more detail, there's been an increase of 374% of the growth in marketing jobs just in 2021. And that translates to 1.3 million jobs that are posted on LinkedIn during that time. The other fun thing to know about is that if you look on LinkedIn right now, just with 2 marketing titles, which is digital marketing manager and growth marketing manager, you'll find 250,000 open jobs right now. It just can't go fast enough. The other challenge is that running a marketing team digitally is now more complex and expensive than ever before. #1, you need to get your digital marketing people on board. And then here's the salaries based on their early career, mid-career, and late career. And here are some of the job titles you might see in that place. Secondly, you want content because you can't put anything online if you don't have a proper content team. So you have to bring them on. Again, here's your content writing team. Then the next group is SEO, because of course you want your content to rank and you want people to be able to find what you're actually doing and spending time on writing. And then you want to be able to run advertising to it. So this is just PPC, which means pay-per-click for any of you non-digital marketing people out there. And that's again, early, mid, late for what you want. And then you want to make sure everything looks nice. You want to make sure you have audio and video and like TikTok videos and Instagrams. That means you need additional marketing roles. People can actually easily spend like $1 million on just digital marketing roles for like just one team today. Whereas back in the day, in my time, I would say I was the only digital marketing manager running an entire team back in like 2013, 2014. So that's why I started Albaloo. We're actually a fractional team that helps startup companies grow. What we do is we go across the entirety of the pipeline and we try to make sure that the marketing actually goes from impression all the way down to pipeline, all the way down to sale. So we're making sure that we're actually growing sustainably for the companies that we work with and that we're not overspending money in any way. We have a team that I've been building over the past few years that goes across all parts of the marketing and sales funnel, starting with website optimization, content, tech and design, lead generation, and sales. And I really believe that you need all of these powers combined to make one holistic world to be able to get out to market as fast as possible. So I've been working on this, expanding the team. I'm Pardees. I am the CEO and founder of Albaloo. I have been doing digital marketing since I was 19. I am 35 years old now. I was part of 2 strategic teams that got acquired. One, I was running digital marketing, as I mentioned before, at Cloud Health, which was acquired by VMware. The big thing that everyone told me then is my name is literally still on everything today. You'll see me on all their Marketo templates, all their email templates, everything that they did, because I was the one that architected the entirety of their campaigns. I was there from Series B up to Series D. I then went to a marketing tech platform called Evergage. I was the customer success manager for B2B companies. I work with companies such as Citrix, SAP, Atlassian, helping them figure out how to better segment their audiences and actually grow conversions with personalization. I was able to get their time to implementation down from 9 months to 30 days with my work. And then I trained the entire team on how to do that. And then they got acquired by Salesforce. I've recruited a COO, his name is Frank. I have known him for about 12 years. We've been volunteering with Venture Cafe together from the beginning of time. He then went and ran an entrepreneurship ecosystem as a director for a Virginia-based think tank called Activation Capital. And then I also have Laura Fitton, who is a newest member of the team. She is coming on as our fractional CMO. She sold her company to HubSpot back in 2012, and she used to be the former chief evangelist of HubSpot as well. And then I love HubSpot so much, I did not realize that Dana would be here. But I also recruited my head of sales out of HubSpot as well. He was actually my partnership manager when I became a HubSpot partner. And he's managed, his name is Tyler Lindley. He's our chief of sales now. He's been managing teams of 1 to 50 for BDRs, really good partnership experience, and we've been working with him since August. We're also backed by a series of mentors who are like the old VP of marketing at Marketo, some of the founders of Localytics, the founders of the last companies I used to work at, who are all helping us get to market, figure out our strategies, and make sure that we're actually helping our companies go to the next level. And then coupling our whole team with our leadership team, we're actually also building like an ecosystem of growth for the companies we work with that includes fundraising, back office support, and ad and media partners. We're now helping new startups get to market by putting together some different marketing and advertising services that these companies haven't seen before. And then we also help all of our companies grow, because as they continue to grow and have marketing and sales growth, they actually need fundraising, they need back office support. We have about 50 partners in this ecosystem today. And it's been working, which is good. We've been realizing like who our target market is over the past 2 years. And it happens to be a lot of subject matter experts who are looking to launch their first company, or subject matter experts working at larger enterprise companies who are about to launch another feature that they're not really sure about. Companies are pivoting into product-led growth for the first time, looking to actually make more money off their paid premium memberships, and actually trying to figure out like what's the best way for them to go impression down to sales and grow sustainably, especially in today's market. We're delivering go-to-market to teams in 2 ways. We have retainers are about $5,000 average. They can go up to $20,000 depending on what people want. We take everything in a 6-month term. Right now we have one up that's probably going to go for another 6 months. We have 1 full year client right now that we've been working with since May of 2021. And then we also do project-based work too. So a lot of these companies come to us, they want it was almost like the SEAL Team 6 of digital marketing to come in, tell them what's wrong, fix their systems, train their team, or hire what's the gaps are missing in their team, and then roll off of that. And that's our $10,000 average, but it can go up to $100,000 and $200,000 depending on what they need. The market right now, I did this based on ad and marketing spend in the world, because we're kind of in between that. And a lot of times when we come up with companies, they actually cut their ad spend to add us on, because they tell us that they're not making money off the ads anyway, so they might as well use it in a better way. So right now we're focused on the US early stage market. Right now it's a $75 billion market. We're very active in Boston, Denver, Austin, Raleigh, North Carolina, and working on getting to LA and San Francisco. And then as we move up market, there's more and more opportunity, because all of these companies are still need to transform themselves digitally. They still need to do product-led growth. They still need to figure out what it is and how to do digital in today's world. It gets more and more complex with like new browsers, GDPR, new laws, whatever it has, it's just getting more and more complicated. Right now, the market worldwide is $790 billion, but that is growing very quickly. And I've seen reports of saying that it might reach $1 trillion between 2027 and 2030. Marketing is here to stay. Right now in our competitive landscape, people put us up against like freelancing, gig economy recruiting. That's like coming up more and more in the marketing world. We're starting to see things like Select Few, Grow Tall, and Marketer Hire really get funding and like kind of find their way in the market. And that only allows you to find freelancers to do a specific job. So you want someone to fix your SEO, you get someone who wants to do SEO, and that's basically it. Then there's also agencies who've been around since the beginning of time, probably. They're also in this space, and some people put us up against them. And then the new thing that's been coming up is like that fractional CMO CRL type role, and those platforms are kind of on top of them. But what we like to do is we kind of put your freelancer and gig with your fractional CRO all in one kind of package. So you're actually able to get subject matter expertise, a holistic strategy with a team that executes it, and with an affordable rate that we actually tie ourselves to your business KPIs versus everybody else. We don't really care how much money you're spending on advertising. If the advertising is not working, we're not going to tell you to spend it, versus some other agencies that get money based on that. So everything we do, we work as your actual team. We're in the Slacks with them. We have daily calls with everybody. We train them, we hire them, and we get them over to the next level. And right now we're getting customers in 3 major ways. Number 1, events and speaking. I go and I speak at the Startup Boston conference every year. I'm also making partnerships with Scroobius and a couple other startup focused conferences. I'm able to close 5% of people in the room within 30 days after my talk. After another 60 to 90 days, I'm able to raise that to 10 to 15%. We also have that partnership ecosystem that I told you about before. We have about 50 partners. We're getting about 2 to 5 inbound leads every single month. And this is with me not having time to follow up with all of our partners, have partnership calls, and do anything. It's just organic coming through of people thinking about us. And then lastly, our organic social media is starting to grow. We have a presence on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, a little bit of TikTok, not really. I was able to close a lead from Facebook last week within 5 days, and I was actually able to beat out 100 competitors that were recruiters, SE, like freelancers, and fractional CMOs. Our revenue, it has been slow, but it's ready to explode this year. So I started the company in 2020. I made about $78,000 then. Between 2021 and 2022, I was really trying to figure out what's the right team, what's the right market, and what's the right way of delivering this. We finally were able to get out of beta, I would say February of this year, and we've exploded since. We have $870,000 committed inside our pipeline, which means that they've already told me that they want to work with us. I just don't have time to onboard them, write everything up, get things going, get the contracts in, and get the teams and processes started. I also have a bench, I like to call it the Albaloo bench, of another like 5 to 10 contractors right now who can be working with, who like reached out to me and say they want to work with us soon. Right now in 2023, I've been able to book $106,000 of business. The current revenue to date is $150,000, and our current MRR is $34,000. And right now, for a path to changing the world of go-to-market and really taking over the world, that starts with 3 key ways. Number one is just doubling our MRR and getting more MRR in the door. We're able to do all these like monthly retainers and making like custom packages across all those like content, SEO, web, whatever you need, and just getting to get more and more companies to sign on, and then being able to upsell and cross-sell what we're doing with our current companies as they gain more funding. Secondly, we're really getting deep on our delivery standards and making sure we're actually able to deliver what we do. We have a team that works together. We have processes and standard operating procedures. That's what Frank is helping us with right now for free, but we want to really ramp that up this year and really get that done. And then thirdly is we're building out our tech side of the business. Tech is actually our second highest expense after contractors. And I want to be able to bring that down so we can actually help our margins grow. Right now, our margin is about 25 to 30%, and that is because of the lack of standard operating procedures and the technology. And I think if we get those down and we get everything working, we can get our margins up to 75 to 80% at least.
Hey, Pardis. Yeah. Let's.
This is my last slide.
Amazing.
So I just want to say, Jonathan, changing the world of go-to-market. I'm looking to raise the 600,000 angel round right now. I have $100,000 already almost committed. I have a couple of meetings to get that wrapped up. That's going to go towards mostly hiring the executive team that you saw is mostly working for free and very fractionally at the moment, and then getting our tech side started so we can then raise the next round after that. Again, my name is Pardis. Please reach out for any questions, and I'm ready to be questioned by our VCs here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Pardis. I'll turn it over to the panel. Feel free to just shout out questions, and I'll spotlight you guys as well.
So I have a question to go over a little bit the investment and what you're building. So I would love to learn more about the tech side of things. So you mentioned the kind of group of people in the back end, but we'd love to see and learn more about the tech side and how you're making things scalable through tech.
Yeah, sure. So everything we do is like the same process. And right now I'm pulling things from, I use SEMrush for SEO. I use SpyFu for ads and SEO, and just like grabs what people are using. I'm also using Growth Channel, which is another firm that can like basically pull out what people are doing based on like media publishers that are out there. They have like 150 billion publishers that like pulls data out for us. And then I also use Sprout Social for figuring out our like social listening platforms. And based on all of those, we basically have like a whole process that goes in from like SEO based on the competitive landscape, based on the founder's profile, based on the type of company that there are. We have different strategies for figuring out what are the best keywords to get out of that. Based on the keywords, we can then dump that into social media and figure out what people are doing to talk about it. And then we can just figure out like what's the best thing for like, you know, if you want to do an Instagram post, like what does that kind of look like? What are the best topics and getting that in? So right now it's all human powered instead of tech powered, but we're using the same process over and over again. I've had my dev friends kind of take a look at it and see what we can do. And I do believe with today's AI, we should be able to build something that can do most of the strategy and then help you do these go-to-market tests that we do as well. And then the last thing is like really reporting and attribution. Right now we're using DataBox, we use a few other attribution tools. No one really does it very well across what you're actually building. And that is because they're building like one size fits all attribution reporting. Whereas we force everyone to do reports in a very specific standardized way that will then allow us to do better attribution reporting on the back end as well.
I'll jump in. I'll just do a +1 to kind of the question around scalability, because that was a big thing that was standing out for me, thinking about, you know, kind of the agency business model is obviously really profitable, but then when you're looking to get like venture-backed type scale and be $1 billion company, kind of how can you get scalability? How can you have repeatability? And so I think looking into kind of the tech solutions makes sense. I wanted to also ask about segmentation and how you're thinking about kind of the core set of company customers that you're going after. Because I liked your slide on the TAM. It's huge. There are
no, it's very huge. Yeah.
So how are you thinking about really what the core is that you're going to go after?
Yeah, so the core that we're going after is AI, blockchain, cloud, and health tech, because those are the ones that like really have really specific needs to the market where they can't find normal marketers who really know what they're talking about. I'm actually trained in cloud. I went through the IBM cloud training program when I was there, so I can talk the talk and people think I'm a technologist when I'm not. I'm just a marketer. And then I basically am teaching my team how to do that by just breaking down the words, breaking down a lot of the glossaries, and just figuring out when to use certain things. So that's why I'm more like tech adjacent than tech enabled at the moment, and hopefully we'll be tech enabled and tech adjacent soon. But yeah, but it does really work for anybody.
That makes sense. Could I follow up to ask kind of like what
Sure.
size company you're thinking about? Is this like small businesses or this enterprise?
Yeah, so right now, most of our customers have at least $500,000 in funding. So it actually is pretty small. And then every now and then we do get a larger company that's coming out. Like I'm pitching one company with like $200 million of funding right now, but they only have one CMO. So the major thing to look at is like who has one person on their marketing team who needs to grow quickly. And that's our best group of customers right now across everything. But I like the small ones so I can close them in like 2 weeks, which is nice.
Yeah, I think I would echo what the other two panelists said about, you know, this needing to be a venture backable business. There needs to be some sort of route to like sort of very, very good unit economics in the like medium to long term. And I think currently, you know, you have a stellar team that's very, very good at marketing, and if you've sort of shown how that model can work in, you know, a bunch of companies, but it's not necessarily clear to me yet how you make that something that, you know, scales to like 50,000 clients or whatever it is you need to be a $1 billion company. I guess in that vein, sort of, do you have any plans to, you know, you had 4 sort of marketing leadership team members that you wanted to hire, but do you have any sort of like tech-based, AI-based, whatever it is, someone who can sort of answer that scalability question in the near term that you're thinking about hiring or thinking about onboarding, some sort of route to making this a tech business?
Yeah, so I have a CTO, his name is Lemmy Boyce. He's the current CTO of Prod Perfect, and he said that he will join the team. He's worked at Drift before as well as a senior engineer. He has like AI, MarTech experience, very good in the field. So yeah, my biggest thing right now is just like getting our revenue through the door to get things done. There are other venture-backed businesses that are like in our space right now and growing, which is kind of strange. There is, I can like bring up a list. I made a list for all of you because I knew that was going to happen. Like there's howdy.com. And they are like us, but for software development across Asia. They were able to have $18 million, went through Y Combinator. His design pickle is 25.2 million. They basically do design as like a thing. And then a lot of these, like what they do is they find people in like Latin America and like other firms to make it more scalable and go. We're doing the same scalability but with like fractional team time. So the reason why we are able to get the unit economics is because we're building someone who like bills at like $90 an hour, but putting them across like 5 to 6 different clients. And as long as we keep everything like very well structured and easy, it's very easy for them to do their jobs and get things up and running. And then we also do have a nearshore team in Argentina, and we also have some people in the Philippines as well to keep those economics down. But yes, and then I also do have a CTO picked out. I talked to him on Friday. He said yes. I can add him to the slides too, but he's not like actually on the team, so I didn't know if that was the thing. But I can add him to the slides too.
I guess quick feedback, just not a question, but more to kind of like wrapping up a little bit the whole scalability and tech angle, because I can see this being something for you. So I guess here you have to make a decision also internally. If you want this to be a pure tech play that's kind of scale and go like crazy and become a $1 billion company, then tech is like an absolute must in today's world, and maybe some AI integration into that is a requirement, I would say. And that's why all of us who invest in startups, we're not looking at someone who's gonna do 2-3x. We're looking at someone who does either 100x or they will fail. Someone who's willing to take that full risk. The agency model would not help you in fundraising from VCs. That's what I would say. It will actually hurt you. And that's why these questions, I think, were kind of went in that direction. So that was one feedback point, is for you to make an internal decision whether you want to pursue this in pure tech or keep it an agency model. But then your funders or investors will be different if you pursue agency. The second piece of feedback I would say is around kind of, maybe you have something special in terms of making your margins good and big and all these kind of things. But you have a limitation with the human resources, and with today's evolution into AI, many of the things that humans are doing will be automated at some point in some form or way. Not everything. So you have to always think about how you're pushing the edge in the marketing space in a way that actually the basis points is covered very quickly, very fast, very cheap. But then everything that's more creative and disruptive, that's where your value comes in, and that's where companies will hire your service for. These are kind of my two takeaways.
Thank you.
Awesome. Any last questions before we move on to the next pitch? Cool. Awesome. Well, Ardis, thank you so much. Next up, we're going to hear from Rand from uCast. So I'll just move the screens around, and then Rand, you can get started.
Thank you, Hani. If you can just make me co-host so I can share my screen. Also, can everybody hear me okay? Yep. Perfect.
All right, Rand, you should have everything you need.
Thank you. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Rand. I'm the founder of uCast, and I graduated. I finished my undergrad at the same month that the whole world announced that they're going onto lockdown. So like every other unemployed new grad, I started my own podcast. And when I started my own podcast, we grew very quickly, and we were able to get a really nice set of niche audiences. And the next logical step for us was, how can we make money out of this podcast? Because, what better way to make money than to just talk to people and do something you love? And we quickly realized that that approach of monetization is one of the most difficult approaches for any podcast creator. And it's one of the most difficult in influencer marketing as a whole. So I became obsessed with the problem, and I did a very, very large deep dive on Reddit to see if other podcasters were facing the same troubles that I was facing. And one of the biggest problems that we found was that more than 97% of podcasts were not monetized or under monetized. And so we wanted to learn why. Why was podcasting and audio, which was one of the biggest and upcoming industries, very fragmented, and why was it having such a difficult time? And so what we realized is, because of how fragmented the industry was, brands would select one or two networks that they would work with and be very loyal with, and they would not look at the whole set of podcasts that exist in the industry. So that made deal flows a lot more difficult for brands, because they were using, agencies and networks were using very outdated and old school tools like Excel and emails. And when we worked with agencies ourselves or networks, we have 100 email threads for one campaign. And just simply brands didn't know where to start to look for the right podcast. And so it was very difficult for brands to work with new podcasts whenever they find a network or an agency that they stick with. And so for podcasters, we were left with agencies that won't take us in. We're left with podcasts that have very niche and big audiences that are under monetized. And we're left with very high cost of trying to run the podcast and find the brands. So what I did is I went to every single pitch competition for the next 3 months. We ended up winning over $60,000 in grant funding from pitch competitions, and we built uCast. So we wanted to focus on helping podcasts and networks really increase their monetization. And so we built really a solution for both brands and podcasts. And this is just a screenshot of one of the messages that I received from podcasts, one of the many messages that we received from podcasters telling us how their agencies are not booking them enough deals, that they're not getting enough ads, and they have a very high audience as well. So we built uCast really with the hope of eliminating that problem. And so we built a two-tier solution, a SaaS tool and a marketplace. A marketplace for brands to be able to browse all podcasts that exist, be able to vet their analytics transparently, see verified podcasts, and be able to send ad deals, whether it's in a bulk order for hundreds of podcasts that exist on different agencies, or whether you want to send one podcast, one offer. It works exactly the same. So we were able to provide them with an analytics tool with high distribution, and we were able to centralize the entire industry with a marketplace. Now, I know centralization has a very bad reputation, but in this case, what we wanted to do is build the Airbnb for podcast advertising. And we also wanted to build a SaaS tool for podcasters and networks and agencies to stop using outdated and old school tools and start using management tool that just help them process everything better, from contracts to payments to booking to rate cards, basically everything. So we wanted to basically encourage them to stop sending 100 plus emails per one campaign and stop using Excel sheets to send to brands to show them their podcast, and instead use our solution. So our value prop to date, we have successfully been able to get podcasts 50% more booking and saving them around 30 to 50% of costs from agency, which is a 30% take per campaign. But also for brands, we were able to create conversion 5 times the conversion rates per $1 spend in comparison to Facebook and Google ads when we ran simultaneous advertisement on across all platforms. And this is how we grow or scale. So we want to improve data collection and discovery ranking across all podcasts. What does that mean? It just simply means how can we get all the possible information that we can on podcasts with accurate data collection? How can we increase that discoverability from both the brands and the podcast side? By that, we increased every podcast earning. We increase podcast earning, more podcasts are encouraged to use our platform and to keep their data updated and analytics updated. So we increase the coverage per network, per topic, that we were able to onboard more brands and that are sending more requests for podcasts. We call them RFPs. So basically sending offers to podcasts. We're able to improve the capability of collecting the right data per ad campaign per brand. And so we're able to better match podcasts and brands on our platform based on the audience. And then increase, again, podcast earning. And then the flywheel keeps going. And that's our plan to scale. The market today is, or by 2028, it is expected to be around $98 billion big. And the market that we're going after really is the $7 billion market, which is the small to medium brands and startups that are looking to start exploring new channels and creative channels to advertising, or not just advertising, but marketing in general. So in between Q1 of 2022 to Q4 of 2022, 1,000 brands spent around $757 million in ad spend. And so what we're looking at is how can our platform increase that number from 1,000 brands to 10,000 brands in the next 5 to 10 years? And what would that look like? The way we make money today, we take 17.5% to 20% in transaction fees from both sides, the brands and the podcast. And then for our SaaS tool, we will be charging $50 to $100 per agency network per podcast listing. Our competition today, the biggest ones are Podcorn, Gumball, and Acast. So Acast is a agency model that is powered by tech. And so still run as an agency today, as well as Gumball. Those both are very big and reputable agency that use that are tech enabled. Podcorn is the only other tech solution that is trying to bridge the gap. But what we've seen is because of the limited customization for podcasts, really the highest use cases was for what we call cross podcast pollination. So that means podcasters advertising their podcasts on other podcasts rather than brands actually utilizing the tool to advertise. Versus us, we use verification tools, we have advanced management tools, podcast resources. We made the platform completely self-served, and we're not an agency, we're simply a tech startup that is trying to make that logistic process of podcast advertising a lot simpler, a lot smoother, and a lot faster. So our first phase was launching our MVP. At that time, we were able to do around 3,500 in monthly deals. We had over 200 podcasts sign up with us. That's when we won the $60,000. We built a team, we built an MVP, we launched a closed beta. And that's when we saw a lot of success and a lot of great feedback from both brands and podcasts. Second phase, which was in the last year, we raised over $100,000 in funding from angels. And those angels are actually very reputable podcasters who saw our solution as something that can grow very big and something that they would use themselves. We were also able to create very successful use cases, and we were the first company to create successful use cases with music labels, where music labels were advertising their artists, either album launches or single drops or tours on podcasts. And our next step really is to take over the music label industry, and that's our very specific vertical that we're going after in the next 3 to 4 quarters. And then we were able to improve data collections, verify podcasts, a lot more podcasts, and improve our self-serving tools. Our goal was to get to 10K in monthly GMV, and we reached that. Now our next goal is to reach 50K in monthly GMV. And then our scale our phase to scale in the next 3 to 5 years, we want to raise our seed to Series A in the next 9 to 11 months. We want to start to also encourage podcast cross promotion. We want to also enable listing benefits and sponsorships on our platform, and introduce better SaaS tools and referral programs for podcasts and brands. And this is one of the ads that we ran. I just want to make sure that the audio is working. So Hani, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear my audio for the ad?
Ah, shit. Accountability. Yes. More accountability. The part that's the envious part is the acceptance of this and the acknowledgement of this. Mandy loves to tell us all how we're delusional. And so, and there's no delusion here.
This is what I like about this.
Hey, but this approach is real. This is how I make myself feel better and feel more empowered. I love Tink's honesty in this, and I'm hyped for this Thanks for Nothing album.
I did want to just read through the track list real quick. It starts with Thanks for Nothing as the intro. Fake Love, followed by Toxic, Save Your Soul,
Oh, yes.
Trust Issues.
Oh, Tink, I wish you healing.
This literally sounds like the roller coaster of
5 stages of grief. That's what I'm hearing.
I love that she leaving from the pillow talk.
The Thanks for Nothing ho-ass boys.
And the amazing team behind the startup. Myself, I'm the founder. I have a background in user experience design, as well as working with startups for over 4 years. In Canada, Toronto, we have our full stack dev, our product lead / AI scientist who helps us with the matchmaking, product designer, our amazing investor who is also a podcaster and owned the podcast network. And then our amazing advisor, who is a second-time founder and grew his marketplace from 1 million to 100 million valuation in just 1 year. And that's the end of the presentation.
Awesome.
So I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Rand. Let me put all the investors back on the screen. And yeah, while I do that, investor panel, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, sure. So I think I'll start here. So first of all, really interesting sort of opportunity here. I think this kind of opportunity to sort of capture the long tail of like not the most popular, under-monetized sort of content creation exists across all content, not just podcasting. So think live streaming, think YouTube, etc. And it's a really big opportunity, specifically because the brand loyalty between the podcaster and the smaller audience is a lot higher. And so you might actually have paradoxically better sort of brand engagement or like, brand return on investment when marketing to like a smaller audience or, a bunch of people who have smaller audiences than a single person who's much more popular and has a bigger audience that maybe doesn't sort of fit the customer profile of the product as well. There's a couple of problems with this thing, and we've encountered them, when looking at a similar company to this called Livad in Turkey. One is that there's a brand risk issue, and so you're capturing the long tail. Your part of the model is that you don't need to screen and look at every single podcast that gets on your marketplace, and so it can be hard for you to always necessarily guarantee brands that the podcast that their ad or their music video or whatever it is going to be shown on is going to be content that they agree with and that they're morally fine with what's being said, et cetera, right? And so what this means is that you're sort of capped to picking either industries that don't really need to care about this or smaller businesses that care less about this. You can't ever really close big brand deals that are really profitable because you have an issue where Coca-Cola is never going to be someone who wants to show up on the 10-viewer podcast because that 10-viewer podcast might actually say something really racist, and that ends up being negative for the brand more so than the higher click through. The second thing is you have these transaction fees which are really good with monetizing smaller creators at the beginning when they have fewer options, but then once you get to like the bigger contracts, the ones that are really profitable, the incentive is to always go direct, and so you have a churn problem. So like someone joins your platform, they grow with your platform, they become more like successful, profitable as a podcast, but then at the upper end they might leave because suddenly they sign a deal where that 17.5% or whatever the take is on that is not really worth them being on your platform anymore, and that single big deal is sort of going to outperform. So those are just sort of issues that we've run into in the past with these kinds of business models. But as I said, still really interested. Any idea on how you sort of manage the brand risk aspect and then also the churn?
Yeah, so we actually verify every single podcast that joins the platform, and we have a verification system in place. There are really two ways that we verify. We either collect networks and agencies who already have to work under a standard in the US, at least for podcasting, where they have to upload transcripts, they have to upload their analytics, quarterly analytics, so they're always updated. And just additional information so that we're always verifying the podcast associated with networks and agencies that are being uploaded versus individual podcasts. They have to upload those information on their own, where they have to, if they want to get verified, and verified podcasts are always at the top of our list whenever you're looking for, as a brand, whenever you're looking for a podcast to advertise on, we show the verified first and then we show the non-verified. So if you want to get on the verified list, you have to upload your reports, your transcripts, all of that information. And then with every single podcast, we do have a tab in terms of some of the topics that they talk about. So for example, if it's a religious podcast, we make sure that brands are very well known that this podcast talks about religious topics. If it's if there's profanity in the podcast, for example, the ad that I just showed you was full of profanity. We make sure that that's a very big label on there that brands are aware of. So really the goal of the platform is transparency, because that does not exist in the industry, and labeling and data collection. So we believe that if we're able to report and collect data across all the different sectors of podcasts, then we're able to show brands, the podcasts that they can actually work with. So that's the first, issue of brand risk that we've dealt with. And also this is why, one of the reasons why we're going through the music industry, because we realize that it's one of the industries that cares the least about such risks. So it's easier for us to onboard them, but it's definitely a risk that we're aware of and we're working on. In terms of the transaction fees, this is also why we're introducing a SaaS model, is because we also realized that at one point agencies and networks, as well as individual podcasts, when they get like 1 or 2 very big deals per quarter, which is usually enough, they might not use transaction fees as possible. And this is why we realized building a management tool or a deal flow tool that also reduces the daily efforts of analytics, of emails back and forth, of all of that nitty gritty details, could be our way of mitigating that financial risk, where you're not just using us as a platform to get discovered and to run ads, but you're also using us as a platform to manage your deal flows, almost like a CRM for your deals. And so really that's our way of trying to anticipate for that unhappiness in terms of SaaS fees. And then whenever, transaction fees. And then whenever those SaaS fees are applied, then we of course reduce the transaction fees with them. So, you're not getting charged as much. I hope that answers your questions.
Yeah.
So one thing to maybe double click on or emphasize was, I know much less about kind of the podcast advertising world, but the take rate seemed high. I think 17 to 20% sounded like a high rate, and maybe that's typical in the industry, but just kind of as you're thinking what Mohammed was saying about companies eventually maybe moving on where they can get direct access, thinking about kind of exactly what the right take rate is there. My question was going to be around your go-to-market efforts and how you are like becoming top of mind for advertisers or for podcasts. How are you going out and kind of what are the go-to-market channels that you're using to get brand awareness or awareness?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So right now, really, our biggest opportunity, or the biggest opportunity we see, like I said, is in the music industry, because we are the only company that is that's always advertising new albums and new single drops for artists. Some of the biggest artists that we've worked with are Zayn Malik, Chris Brown, Tank, Money Man, some like very big and impressive names. And we realized, since we're the only ones doing that, there's a lot of opportunity for us to go literally agency by agency, knocking on doors and saying, hey, these are the ads and these are the scripts that we've done. This is the results that we've done for artists. Do you want to try this channel as well? And since Empire Records, the record label that we're working with, is such a big name, and it allowed us to write a use case on them, this has been a very successful vertical for us. And that's our initial go-to-market. I know this is not a scalable go-to-market, but this is our initial foot in the door. Once we are able to get as many labels and music artists on board, then we want to start working with artists and brand sponsorship as well. So we want to be able to actively go to brands that are interested in specific artists or music artists and be like, hey, we're working with this music label. We know you're interested in working with this artist. Why don't you do a co-sponsorship deal? Or brands are slowly trying to, get it to work with artists as well as go into the podcasting world. So it's not just, a brand going into podcasting for the first time, but it's also a brand partnering up with a specific music artist, maybe a specific tour, maybe a specific album, to be able to, work with both and get the attention of brands a little bit more. So that's our next 2-year plan in terms of how we want to go to market.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense to me. I was going to say, I feel like this is a world where there are probably lots of gatekeepers or channels that make things more accessible. And it sounds like you kind of have the right plan to get past those. So very cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a quick one. So I'm also not an expert on podcasts, but I've listened to many of them. And I wanted to verify one small thing here. So many times you have things happening on the screen, but you're not really watching it or paying attention to it. So is there a way that you can track really who's going to be seeing the ads, like proactively or interacting with it? Or how do you do it in a way that's kind of 100% that people will see it in a way or another?
Yeah. So are you asking the questions on how do we get attribution for brands? Like how do we report on attribution?
I mean, yes. So like when you have a podcast running and you're putting an ad there, so how do you make sure that the actual customer eventually is seeing that ad? Like,
Yeah.
how can you guarantee that?
So there isn't really any way for us to 100% know that anyone is going to interact with the ad. That's why our platform solely focuses on what we call CPM, which is live read ads. And what we mean by that is we don't promote inserted advertisement. Those are ads that you can skip through on Spotify, on other players. And also those are the platforms, those are the ads that some certain platforms detect. So if you're paying for like iHeart Premium, all the ads would automatically skip. So what we do is we only promote live read advertisements, like we just show you on that ad, where it's an embedded segment or like a live segment that is very natural and very authentic, that is read by the host during the podcast. And so really, if you're listening to it, there's no, unless you power through it yourself, you cannot skip through it. So that is our best way of trying to get the audience to interact with it for now. In terms of attribution and how can we report on attribution, we are able to use a tool that helps us track the IP address of listeners. And then if that same IP address within a 30-day period visits the website that we have pixelated, then we're able to report that as a successful attribution or successful conversion. And then based on that reporting, we're able to see, again, if there was a checkout, if there was a purchase, if there was an album download, whatever it is, really.
That's cool. Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Rand. I think we're going to keep things moving. Really appreciate your presentation and questions from the investors. All right. Next up, Richard, I'm going to give you co-host so that you can get things started.
Thank you, Ani. Just waiting on the share screen.
All right. Should be good now.
All right. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. I've dropped my info in the chat. I'd love to connect with whoever's interested and want to continue the conversation. Today, I want to talk about OpenBuild AI and how to build AI-powered services and processes in just minutes. As you guys know, the AI landscape is imploding. From 2020 until today, we have doubled in deal sizes in terms of investments, and $2.6 billion were invested last year in over 110 startups. You can see also the distribution of this investment is actually not that large. Most of it has been in AI startups focused on text, like social media and marketing content, image manipulation, enterprise AI avatars. On the right side here, you see speech and audio as well, gained 26 deals with 212 million. And you have a little section here with code and code completion. So distribution is not that vast in terms of the categories of markets. Now, AI and generative AI in terms of the quadrant is here. Most of you might know what the quadrant is. These are the startups across these categories that I just covered, from image to code. These are all the startups that are involved so far. And on the right side, you see that Y Combinator, who technically sets the trends and invests early in companies. They invested in over 57 startups in generative AI, to be specific. And Gary Tan, who is the CEO of Y Combinator, has actually told Forbes that generative AI is the new frontier, like iOS apps, like Facebook apps in the days. So it's going to set the precedence for a new wave of applications. Now, the market itself is projected to hit 126 billion global AI software market size by 2025. And it is estimated that AI products will probably power about $15.7 trillion in global markets by 2030. So AI will make a dent in the economies of scale. Now, what are the AI challenges today? Many of you have heard about ChatGPT, OpenAI, Bard, Llama, and everything that's coming up. But from a builder's perspective, because I am a technologist, I build products, I know that most of what's out there right now, it's manual, like you type in a command, you get a result, or low code, meaning you need to code your API integrations, you need to connect API keys and type commands as well, hence command engineering and such. There's also fragmentation, because companies might need an AI-powered tool to generate content, another one to generate an image, another one that might write code. So there will be fragmentation in the market when it comes to AI-powered startups. Also, there's a monetization issue. As a developer, you build an app, how do you monetize it? How much do you need to invest to create that payment layer, integrations, and so on? And of course, the cost of deploying so many tools can become expensive. And finally, accuracy of data. You have hallucinations, you have acquired traits that are problems nowadays with these AI tools. And of course, privacy. The more fragmented you are as your tech stack, the more likely you'll have more privacy concerns. This is why we decided to build OpenBuild AI. We focus on a no-code editor. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. We consolidated a lot of capabilities of what you can do across the board in one visual board. We also created a built-in monetization system and made it very simple to deploy in terms of cost of the platform. And we centralized your data in one place, so you're worried about one place to store your data generated by AI and secure it. So let me give you a quick dive over the platform. From a very high level, we created a no-code, drag and drop, very easy to build, a visual builder with recipes pre-built for you. So if I am to give you an example of a process I can build in minutes, which all of you know, AI content like articles generated by ChatGPT, what I can do with OpenBuild is I can create a daily repeatable process running on its own that could potentially generate an article. And you can see how I'm setting the parameters here of what kind of content. So maybe I'm going to tell the system generate AI and marketing content every day. I want you to create a related image. So I'm now stacking commands. And finally, I'm merging the commands together here. So I can say, create an article, create an image, create an audio, merge them together. And finally, an output. So what happens to that data? So in this particular case, I simply created a daily process that generates an article in AI marketing. It could be any topic. And I'm going to send this article to my team. And I'll show you exactly in this internal test how this looks like. And I can also upload it to my WordPress website. I can upload it anywhere that I want. So it's very simple. You can see here a proof of concept on one use case, right? Another example is creating an automated chatbot that feeds from your knowledge base. So imagine you have a knowledge base of articles. You can feed it into the AI engine. We'll generate a chatbot powered by ChatGPT. Okay, very easy configuration here, so don't get too overwhelmed with the options. And we'll give you a code, you put it on your site, and that code will literally becomes something like this. I'm sorry, I think here we go. So now on the website, you'll have a chatbot that's automatically updating once you update your knowledge base. We did this in VBout, which is our parent company. We will also make it available so anybody can build those AI chatbots from their existing knowledge base without having to touch a line of code. And this is one of thousands of potential automations that you can build over OpenAI. Now we added a monetization option with forms. So you can create a service, have people fill out a form with input, you feed it into the engine, and they could pay you for this. For example, translate a 500-page document into 10 languages for $10. And finally, we made the product reseller program ready with ability to white label the product as your own, to add clients and resell it with your own price points, and of course, with the robust reseller infrastructure, because we understand this model. Now let's go ahead and talk about the go-to-market. Obviously, we have the organic reach. We've done thousands of events in the past, podcasts, and we're going to do product cred with VBout integrated marketplaces. We also have partner channels. We know how powerful partner channels can be, so they can resell the platform with a referral program for non-resellers. So if you just want to create a tutorial and plug it into your video, you can do that. And we're going to go social, of course, with paid reach, niche Facebook groups, and short videos with Reels. The competitive landscape is very fluid right now because it's a new market. But if I am to parse them into direct competitors like Otori, BuildSpace, or middle connectors like Zapier, what we did in OpenBuild is we created a robust data source. So you can feed the command from an API, from a built-in source, from a variable, from a form, and so on. We also built a smart integrated form with payments, so you can build your services and gate those with a paywall. We support processes or services. It doesn't have to be something that produces an article. It could be maybe cleaning up an Excel document that gets uploaded by your finance team. And finally, we also made it white label and reseller ready, which is something unique to us. Our customers are going to be marketers, agencies, coaches, and consultants, because we understand this market very well, coming from a MarTech world. And we already have about 4,000 plus digital agencies and coaches on the platform. So we can immediately plug that into the ecosystem. We also have IT professionals like developers who want to automate writing code, product managers and administrators, and finally e-com, where we can literally plug in your entire database and have a chat bot that communicates with your customers based on orders, history, and so on. In terms of numbers, we're gonna make the product very easy, flat fee, $100. Pay-per-use, where you preload at $20 and you charge 100. We charge 100% markup on what we pay, and we have an agency add-ons through stacking, resellers, and white labeling. Currently, there are 30 million developers using OpenAI. Of course, these numbers are probably under reported, and the deployment is going to be by the end of 2024. We estimate 10K adopters of OpenBuild, 2025 50, and 200K by 2026. The ARPU of $50 on average will probably hit by 2026 $10 million in monthly recurrent revenue at this adoption rate. And these are just general conservative numbers with very low adoption rates. Our roadmap is pretty much set already. We're going to integrate with Bard once the API is out. We can add the paywall and the forms with Stable Diffusion, Facebook Llama, deep e-commerce, and smart commands. And it's really important to focus that OpenAI is not the only engine. There are more that are to come, and we'll have a lot of other difficulties in terms of creating waterfalls, like the results coming in from one engine should be better than another, and how you make the system decide on which is better for your output. In terms of the team, we know automation. We've built VBout, which is a marketing automation engine, and we've secured top 20 on the market for the past 7 years. So we know exactly how automations work, what people can build on top of it, and we are set to build the next AI-powered automation engine. We are seeking 5 million right now, so we can launch beta, boost brand awareness, develop our integrations library, and expand AI engineering. This is all I have for today. I'll take any questions.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks.
Leave it to the investor panel. Feel free to dive in with questions.
I'm happy to kick it off. Thank you, Richard. This is really great.
Sure.
So in this world of generative AI kind of taking off, one thing that my team talks about a lot is how a lot of incumbents are going to win because they already have the user base. And so Microsoft, for example, their Copilot will probably do well because Microsoft already has so many people using Microsoft Office tools, and then you just inject generative AI, and now all of their users are also using that. So I'm curious, kind of how is OpenBuild going to cut through that noise, kind of at the application layer, and is it between, targeting different customers? Is it kind of targeting different use cases? But how do you feel like you can win against kind of larger incumbents that maybe are already going to have really big user bases?
Thank you, Dana. I think this is a great question. Now, in terms of what we are focused on in terms of target market, starting with the marketers, most marketers they use other products than Microsoft, and they're focused on the flexibility of creating microservices and charging for them, including white labeling the platform as their own. So this particular kind of angle to the product is going to be differentiator than just deploying Microsoft, because of course Microsoft tools don't come cheap if you are scaling and you have 500 clients or 1,000 clients. Also the flexibility of the platform itself and how you can build it and stack things on top of each other. So we're focused really on this niche of companies want to create a microservice, or if you want to call it a micro app or web app, to monetize that app if they want, and also to white label the solution as their own. So this is kind of differentiator from the bigger players on the market. And you guys know at HubSpot is a big brand in the digital marketing world, but you're not the only brand, and people continue deploying other products even though you're providing some of the best quality software and support. And the market I'm targeting is probably as big, if not more, than just the marketing space. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious too, and you might have touched on this, but as you think about kind of engaging the different target markets, how are you using like product-led growth or kind of, I don't know, ways of getting customers in the door that are maybe more self-serve or are easier to use, or is this kind of a more long decision, kind of handhold onboarding type product?
So I guess, product-led, there are different ways you can go about it. One is integrations through marketplaces, right? We integrate with Shopify and WordPress, and we just go out there in the marketplace. We also have, product tutorials and education and an academy, which we will build and allow people to access as long as they're part of the platform. Events also, which come hand in hand with the product-led. So I guess this is our strategy to move forward. And it's really, I want to make it clear, this is pre-launch. So this is all POC right now. We built the product, as you can see internally, and we're validating the outputs and the consistency of the data. But we understand how this works from VBOUT to build OpenBuild.
Great, thanks so much. And let me plug the HubSpot app marketplace as somewhere that you could integrate as well. We would love to have you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll sort of go next. I think one of the things that we think about when looking at the space is that it's evolving extremely quickly. So, a week ago, plugins was, or, a couple of weeks ago, plugins was all the rage. Now it's AutoGPT, et cetera, et cetera. The rate of evolution is extremely, extremely rapid. And so when we're thinking about companies that have like staying power, it's not necessarily, that we're interested in exactly what you're building now necessarily, but also your ability to sort of like figure it out, pivot as the technology changes, and build some sort of stable sort of competitive advantage that is aside from your, okay, we're monetizing slightly differently or we're doing X slightly differently, because the entire landscape could change such that sort of doesn't really matter. So from that sort of perspective, the biggest sort of thing is the team and whether we sort of see a company or a founder group of people that is able to sort of pivot and figure out what's where the opportunity lies. I was hoping you could tell me a little bit about your sort of previous experience. You mentioned VBOUT and a lot of people coming from there, and sort of how that prepares you for sort of this uniquely sort of shifting landscape.
Sure. So I think we worked in the most kind of evolving landscape, which is marketing tech and automation. So if you think about the evolution of email marketing to be specific, it hasn't evolved much since inception, right? You send an email to somebody, it's very dull, it's HTML based, but then it evolved in a way where you can create drip campaigns, and now you can do drip campaigns in smarter ways, and then now you can drip campaigns powered by AI. The same thing in this industry, because AI is here to stay, because it's changing the way information is being produced and accessed. We're creating the layer that's going to power the automation of it, including rules and flows, and that's going to just adapt to the existing technology. So if ChatGPT comes up with a new component that could plug into our automation, we're not necessarily going to change. It's just the building of the process and the building of the automation itself is what we're going to power. So people will need processes for email now and 10 years from now. And I think because this is a new emerging industry, they will need processes to build automation over AI now or 10 years from now. That's just my 2 cents as what I know today.
Great.
Cool. Hey, Richard, great seeing this coming together. Also here, very passionate about AI and what's going on in the space. So happy you guys are putting this together. So I guess I have a question more around how you guys are building this internally. Are you using much of prompt engineering, or you're coding things at the very bare minimum, or how are you guys going around it, technically speaking?
Sure. So at VBOUT, we already have a robust layer for automation. So what we're doing, we're adopting the same technology to allow that visual drag and drop, which is a big engineering task. Part of it is going to be prompt engineering, which, I mean, command engineering is something that's going to go. So it allows you to either use pre-built templates for those who do not want to worry about what the command will look like, and will allow you to build your own open command It will also allow you to parse your own command, maybe even from one command to another. So you can, for example, tell ChatGPT, you can create an engine that says, give me the command for generating code for a JavaScript function that does X. And that will merge to another function, or the next step, which is send this to, I don't know, GitHub and fork it. So you see what I mean? Like you can do that. So I would say it's already pre-built, piggyback on what we have in vBout, predefined commands, as well as your own open commands, using OpenAI to start, but then eventually we'll add BART API, we'll add Llama from Facebook, which is also pretty interesting. And many other engines are coming out there, as you know. Yeah.
Okay. And in terms of interacting with the tool, how much back and forth can the end users have? Meaning, hey, okay, I don't like this output. I want it to be fine-tuned or changed somehow. Do they have any flexibility or customization possibilities, or it's going to be dictated by whatever you offer them?
This is a great question. So Sami, there are a breed of products right now coming up that creates a learning model based on your own data. So you're going to be able to do that with vBout as one of the things you can do. I mean, with the OpenBuild, I'm sorry. So with that being said, I think feeding it your data if you want, and then we'll create internally engines or tools to verify based on your own configuration. So we create something like, okay, these are the things that I would like to have. So we'll create our own learning model internally as well, based on your preference and based on your own data. And this something will be built into the engine itself, but that's probably for next year's expansion.
Or you can plug in with other players who've done some of that as well and leverage it maybe.
Yes.
I'll share something privately with you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Awesome. Any last questions before we move on to Stefano? Cool. All right. Thank you so much, Richard. Stefano, you are up. I'm just going to make you a co-host and spotlight your video, and then you can get started and we'll hear about Podeo.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. You should be able to share now.
All right. There we go. Screen is up. Perfect.
Yes.
So hi guys, I'm Stefano, founder of Podeo. So my audio journey started around 8 years ago. Still in high school, came up with this idea to build an audio social network. Eventually tried to build a product, crashed and burned, started going after grants and programs and competitions. And then eventually landed the grant from the 2022 FIFA World Cup. It was a $150,000 equity fee grant to basically build a product that's catered for the FIFA World Cup. So it all started with that idea of aggregating and building a smart podcast aggregator, whereby if you have a 27-minute ride to the stadium with personalized 27 minutes worth of pre-game analysis in audio and what's going on in that stadium. And essentially, we were aggregating content from different RSS feeds and from the Apple directory, and then built this proprietary algorithm to serve the content according to commute times, interests, mood, time of the day, and so forth. And then what we realized was that out of 4 million podcasts, less than 500 were in Arabic. And for us, that meant a massive opportunity to scale supply in terms of content creators and podcasters, and automatically scale demand as well in terms of listeners in emerging markets, whereby podcast adoption is less than 2 to 3%, which is essentially the current state of the Middle East and North Africa, which is a launchpad for us to expand to Southeast Asia, and then eventually to more countries such as LATAM and Africa. So to look at the global podcast landscape, essentially the full value chain is from creators, listeners to advertisers. Globally, even creating a podcast is still a massive challenge. You have 50 million creators globally, less than 2 million are podcasters. So that's around 1.5% of the content that's created daily that's attributed to podcasting. From a listening perspective, discoverability and accessibility is also still a big problem. And that's even more amplified in markets where you have multiple dialects, which is essentially the case of a lot of markets that we're tackling, such as emerging markets and Southeast Asia. And then from an advertising perspective, also the chain is still broken. It's still very fragmented, and monetization is also a big problem in podcasting. And we've also seen that problem as well with uCast. And so what we did was we really positioned Podeo as the central infrastructure and the enabler for the entire podcast economy in emerging markets, in markets whereby creation and supply is relatively low, and whereby we come in with a full stack solution to scale creators, listeners, and advertisers in these markets. To look at the global or the regional landscape at the Middle East and North Africa, we had essentially less than 1,000 podcasters accumulated over a span of 10 years. Since we launched Podeo, the creator product 10 months ago, we onboarded so far over 30,000 new podcasters, generating millions of listens on a monthly basis. And that process was really due to the fact that we were able to democratize the process on the supply side, facilitate discoverability and distribution to all major podcasting platforms, and even offline channels as well, like radio stations and so forth. And then from an advertiser perspective, it's also helping these creators and all that supply that's being generated and through programmatic advertising and also through marketplace that we'll talk about in a bit. So what we noticed was that creators were using on average six different tools to create a podcast. So one tool to record, another to host and distribute, another to potentially monetize, another to do the branding. And so the process was very fragmented. And so we brought all these tools in one place, which is an end-to-end platform for creators to create, distribute, host, monetize, and amplify their audience as well and their reach. So three reasons why creators are coming to the Podeo platform and being retained on our platform. One, it's the end-to-end tools that we're providing for them. Two, it's the mass reach that we're facilitating through one-click distribution and integration to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, radio channels, which we sign exclusively as well. In-app SDKs that we built to consume podcasts within existing games and commuting services and mobility services. So really the goal was to bring podcasts to the billions of ears, and the only way to do that was to actually integrate it and really merge it into the current habits of existing consumers. And then the third reason is essentially engagement insights that we are able to provide to creators. So the current landscape or technology of podcasts is still RSS feeds. And RSS report very limited data in terms of consumption. So only the number of listens, then from which country, from which device. So it's very limited for the creator to understand their consumption. And the only way to gather more data is essentially through our own listening app. And Podeo today, the listening app is one component of our platform, but the core functionality of the listening app is to, one, build and give more data for creators. We don't monetize that product. Two, it's to facilitate creation. So we also integrated creation abilities within the listening app to convert listeners to creators and make it as easy as recording on the go, adding a sound effect, add a background music, and then one click it gets distributed on every single platform, including the Podeo app, including Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, and so on and so forth. And then the third reason that we built and we have the Podeo app is also for hyper-local discoverability. So Saudi Arabia, content in Saudi Arabia isn't listened to the same population in Egypt. So dialect is a big factor when it comes to discoverability, which is why around 95% of the total listens of the podcast industry are generated by less than 1% of the podcast creators or the shows. So usually the split is around 80-20, but in this case, because discoverability is also a challenge and even amplified in markets where you have multiple dialects, we also had to introduce the community and sort of the hyper-locality discoverability. And then from an advertising perspective, that complements the entire value chain and the entire product line that we have to help creators monetize. So we basically have the programmatic ad tech, which connects to all the major DSPs and the trading desks. So Google 360, the trading desk. We also have now an exclusively signed partnership with Rotana, the RMS, to basically sell all of the inventory through direct deals. So we're outsourcing that sort of the agency part to RMS. And then we also have the marketplace whereby we connect creators with brands, whereby the CPMs are way higher because it's a host read ad. From a market perspective, we sort of segmented the market between supply, demand, and then from an advertising market as well. So creators, there's 50 million creators globally. We're tackling the 10 million creators that are available in the market in the MENA region to start with, and then eventually expanding to other emerging markets. And from an advertiser global ad spend, we're able to tap into the radio audio ad spend as well, which is the larger scope of the podcast. So the global podcast ad spend was around $2 billion. Last year. The radio ad spend was around $38 billion. So because of our ability to distribute content on radios as well and on alternative channels, we essentially unlock larger TAMs by expanding our TAM from 2 to 38, because we're expanding and we're also reaching offline listeners, which are also called passive listeners. So we're really positioned at this sort of center between the online and the on-demand and offline channels, whereby we facilitate creation through on-demand, and then we also amplify it on other alternative channels to help with our creator reach. So we also have a B2B or enterprise service that we're providing to brands and publishers. The largest brands and publishers across the region are using Podeo to host and distribute and monetize their podcasts. We have multiple verticals, but the most important one that essentially generates the most listens is the existing publishers. So Al-An, MTV, Albaloo, which are all major publishers across the region. We also sort of found product market fit with specific publishers, whereby they taking existing articles, repurposing them into audio, and then they're achieving around 85% completion rate for the same article if it was read in audio. And that also unlocks another completely new different revenue stream for them, which is pre-roll, mid-roll, and post-roll audio ads, which they couldn't have figured out in the past. So our traction, we got to 95% now market share for all the supply across the region in the last 10 months. Historically, we had less than 1,000 podcasters. We accumulated over 30,000 podcasters now as of Q1. Because of our ability to democratize the process and to facilitate the process for creators to get on board quicker and to create on the go and to distribute on the go as well. And that's automatically reflected in terms of listens, which is growing at 50% month over month. Our revenue streams, so we monetize creators and advertisers, and then listeners, the listening app, we don't monetize it. Again, the sole purpose of the listening app is to provide more data for creators, which we could charge higher prices from the SaaS fee for the creator product. So we introduced these pricing packages 2 months ago. We have the $5, $20, and $250 enterprise package. We onboarded so far 10 clients under the enterprise package, which are publishers. For the premium, we have around 200 customers as well now on the trial, and then on basic as well. It's growing, and it's mainly storage. And additional advanced analytics and even higher rev share for the advertising. And then for the advertiser product, we have a 50% rev share for programmatic ads, which we source from DSPs. So if a CPM is $10, we basically keep $5 and then we pay $5 to the creator. And that's calculated every 1,000 listens. For sponsorships, we take 20% of the sponsorship value. And that's because we facilitate it through our marketplace. From a competitive landscape perspective, across the Middle East and North Africa and other emerging markets, Podeo is the only enabler and infrastructure tech play. All other players are essentially content creators or production houses, whereby these are either our customers or they're being onboarded as part of our SaaS packages. Globally, there's multiple players that focus on verticalized products, and that could be applied in markets where you have existing demand for podcasts and where podcast is already being consumed and reaching 30-40% of the population. But in cases where we're creating a market like the MENA region, like Southeast Asia, where podcast is completely inexistent, launching and focusing on one vertical of the value chain will not work. And we've seen that with Anchor, for example. Anchor is just a creator tool. They got acquired by Spotify a few years ago, but around 60% of the shows that are available on Anchor have less than 1 episode. And the reason behind that is creators were starting their podcast with Anchor and then distributing it on these existing podcast platforms, But the problem on these podcast platforms is also, and on podcast apps, is also discoverability. So the churn of the creator was pretty much high. And the way we solve that in emerging markets, in markets where adoption from a listener side is still emerging and growing, we go after alternative distribution channels, and we signed exclusively radio stations and gaming apps and mobility services to make our distribution available and our content available on their platforms as well.
Hey, Stefano, sorry to interrupt. Want to try to wrap things up so we can get to questions.
Sure. Yeah, so that's the final slide. We're a team of 30. We're 3 co-founders. We built our previous venture, audio tech venture, together, Mario, Anthony, and myself. And happy to go through the rest of the team as well. But we were able to fill essentially our head of departments in the past 2 years. Which and for us today, the team is pretty much efficient, completely efficient. We're not planning on onboarding any new team members for the next few months. And from an we have Razor Capital led our previous round. We did a pre-seed round 2 years ago. And we have around 30 angel investors across coming from the Valley all the way to the MENA region.
Awesome. All right, investor panel, open up to you guys.
Sure, I guess I'll start here. So I think extremely sort of interesting business model. I think one concern that I have is kind of like what you were mentioning here, which is your, end to end in terms of developing a podcast, distributing it, all these things are great, but the market doesn't seem to exist yet. And so you're kind of making a bet that this market will exist and like sort of will scale to be something venture backable. But at this exact moment, probably like, the new areas that you're expanding into, et cetera, like it's unclear that these markets will actually be profitable or big enough to sort of support venture funding as like a reasonable means of scaling. So what's been your experience thus far in terms of like launching podcasting in markets that are sort of nascent? How does the growth sort of look like? And sort of how do you make sure that period of perhaps negative margin growth isn't too prolonged or too extended?
Yeah, very good question, Hamad. I think that's also like a sort of a concern that we've sort of overcome with also mass distribution, right? And ability to go beyond the podcast ad market. I mean, at the end of the day, as a culture in the region and in other emerging markets, it's always been that culture to consume and to tell stories. So that, radio reaches 200 million people across the Middle East and North Africa, and they tune in to radio every other week. And radio reaches actually more households than TV. And the habit of consuming audio content has always been there. And that shift from offline to on-demand has to be built by an enabler and by an infrastructure, which is really the sort of role that we're playing in that market. And the negative growth is the negative margin growth that you're sort of referring to is inevitable when there's no supply and there's no demand, right? If you don't have creators and you don't have listeners, then naturally advertisers and brands aren't excited to advertise on podcasts. But we've seen that brands are actually spending billions on podcasts in the US and in Europe, where you have enough supply and you have enough demand. And if you look at, the digital ad spend across the region, it's, I think, around 5 to 6 billion, if not more. And that essentially is, and that delta is being transferred from the offline audio, radio advertising to eventually fit into the podcast ad category. And we've seen that now. So we launched, so I'll share another slide for that. So basically what we did, we signed exclusively with Rotana Media Services, which is basically the advertising arm of Rotana, whereby they will essentially represent our entire inventory and then onboard all of their brands to spend on audio ads through the Podeo platform. And something that we're also seeing in terms of traction is that we also signed Galaxy Racer, which basically managed the entire, the top 100 creators across the MENA, across Southeast Asia. They have Noor Stars, for instance, over 20 million subscribers on YouTube. And they're onboarding 10 of their top creators before year end. And we were able to sort of get that deal because now we have sort of good unit economics to prove that every 1,000 listens, these creators are getting paid that much. So now it's really a scaling game, right? The infrastructure was built, the infrastructure and the technology, and the enablement part was sort of solved for. And now it's really about expanding our reach and expanding the market and really building the market. And at the end of the day, that's really the opportunity. We're going after markets where you have very nascent consumption, whereby you come in with a full infrastructure and really own the market by building extensive barriers of entry.
Great, makes sense.
Hey, Stefano, great to see this, how it kind of evolved over time. So I have a small question though on, so you build this end to end. First, like, how long have you been working on this to start with? How many years?
So Podeo, we founded Podeo in January 2020. The previous venture was the social network, the commuter, the smart aggregator for commuters, and before that it was the social network for audio. So it was, we took probably a few pivots here and there, but in the back, back in the time I was very part-time, still in high school. Dropped out of college of computer engineering 2 years ago when I started Podeo, and then it was also around the time where we got our pre-seed round. So it was always constantly going with that vision and that mission of building audio and enabling audio and bringing audio to emerging markets and to markets whereby you really have inexisting markets, and took a few products to get to where we are today, but the growth has been fantastic. Yeah.
Okay. And then another question, because I saw one of the slides you're highlighting kind of the problems in the industry and how even Apple Podcast is a disaster and some other things. Why would you only focus on the MENA? This could go global in a way or another, and this could become maybe a target for an Apple to buy one day or someone like that.
Right. So the trajectory is going global, and but the strategy, the go-to market, is by focusing on emerging markets. So the MENA market was a launch pad for us. Our next market is Southeast Asia, so Bangladesh, Thailand, and Pakistan, and then our next market is also LATAM. But the rollout was, I mean, we couldn't just just scale globally. It was really, it had to come in parts. We had to prove the model in a market that's similar to the MENA, and that's very fragmented in terms of dialects and very complex in terms of adapting and personalization for these languages. But we were able to crack that part. So that playbook that we have from scale supply, scale demand, and monetize the inventory has already been built and proven. And now it's just about scaling that to other similar markets, which we've already identified.
And then the final one on that one, and maybe it's not a question that I have, but probably more for the general audience, like what's particular about those markets, the emerging markets, versus you going west after US or like Western Europe?
So for us, I mean, it's the market for podcasts. I mean, in our case, I'll speak about Podeo. The market for podcasts in the US is already pretty much not saturated, but it's already fulfilled by other players. And for us, the opportunity that we see is to build a market and not be part of a market. And to build a market, we have to go after markets that aren't existent in terms of podcasting. And the opportunity is in mass as well, compared to the US or to Europe.
Cool, thanks.
I wanted to ask about kind of how you're thinking about some different strategies broadly. So first, let me say your traction looks like it's been great, and this has been a really interesting pitch. How are you thinking about virality and sort of, how are the podcasts that are being produced making other people find out about you and produce more? How are you thinking about defensibility? And, if this market is kind of white space, like who else could come in? How are you protecting yourself from that? And then finally, everyone's favorite topic, how are you thinking about generative AI and having that be part of the platform?
Perfect. Yeah, I'll tackle them quickly, I think, because we have 3-4 minutes for questions. But happy to continue the conversation, Dana. But as high-level points, so I'll start by generative AI. For us, we're integrating as well now part of the creator tool, generative AI tools to help creators better write descriptions for the podcast, to better write titles, to better optimize it for discoverability. That's one. Two, it's also help. So for the second part, it's for virality. We actually built we built social tools and community tools within our listening app, which today around 50% of total listens are being generated on the Podeo app. That was pure organic growth that we really because we were able to also tackle on that Arabic focused sort of vertical. So we built network effects by integrating creation abilities within the listening app. So now if you also want to interview, let's say a guest, you send them the link, they need to download the Podeo app. We also built a Zoom that's integrated within the listening app. So now you can also get interviewed on the Podeo app. Once you do that, you're either a listener on the app or you become a creator, because it's really easy to become a creator. And then for the barriers of entry, for us, we signed exclusive deals with distribution channels and with radio stations. Because we have the largest library that we can distribute to all these radios, then it makes sense for all these radios to get content directly and only from us. So all of our contracts with the radios are exclusive for the next 5 years. So for the next 5 years, the only place they can get their podcast from is if the podcast is available and hosted on our platform. What's in it for them? They're reducing the production costs. They're getting ready-made content ready to be aired. For the creator, it's mass reach that they can't get otherwise, and we're the funnel for creators to get to mass reach.
Great, thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Stefano.